Hi everyone, Tom Slivick, and with me is Phillip Hahn. Phillip Hahn's the police chief in Sutter Creek, and we're going to get a chance to meet him. Phillip, you say you've been here a month?
1 month exactly.
1 month exactly. Okay, I've talked with him a little bit, and he's a pretty interesting fellow. And we're going to take our first break, and then we'll come back and we'll get into the interview. So stay with us right here on TSPN. You're watching Amador County's #1 news and sports leader, TSPN. Hi everyone, and welcome back. And like I said, we're talking to the police chief of Sutter Creek, Phillip Hahn. Phillip, good to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, and you've been here 1 month. We established that on the right before the break. How are you liking it here?
Love it. Love the atmosphere, the small town. I grew up in a very small town in New Mexico, so it kind of reminds me of my childhood.
Okay, like the closeness of the community?
Sure.
And the smallness where you feel important? I mean, I feel important here. I just mean, you know, like when I go in Sacramento or whatever, and there's all the people, I just like, God, it seems like there's just numbers.
Exactly, and here you feel like you're a part of something and a part of the community, which, you know, is pretty neat for a police officer.
Right, and I didn't feel that way until I moved up here because I come from L.A. area. Okay, and you know, tell us about your background. How many you married?
I'm married. We have 5 kids between us. Some are adults, and we got one little guy left in the house.
Okay, was that little guy? Was he is that your son helped pin the badge on you?
Yes, that's Christopher.
Okay, so how old's Christopher?
He just turned 12.
Just turned 12. Okay, great. And so you're up here now, living. Do you live in the Sutter Creek area?
I do live in in town.
Okay, so how do you like Sutter Creek? How would you describe it?
I would say it's small town America. You know, people have been extremely friendly and nice and outgoing and welcomed me with open arms, and people have gone, you know, what I would say out of their way to make me feel welcome.
Okay,
so.
Now you come from your police background before you came up here was in, let's see, Desert Hot Springs?
Yeah, so...
Is Desert Hot Springs bigger, more people?
Desert Hot Springs is authorized for 34 officers.
Oh, wow.
They're down to probably about 23 right now. So I started my career in Escondido, California, and then from there I went to the Riverside County DA's office, and then from there I went to the Indio Police Department out in the Coachella Valley, and then moved over to Desert Hot Springs.
Okay, so we're a lot different than Desert Hot Springs, and the 34 police officers that you could have been manned to, I think that's more than the Sheriff's Department has, I believe.
No, it's slightly smaller than Amador Sheriff's Department.
Okay.
Actually, I believe they have about 50 deputies or so.
Oh, okay, great. All right. So what does the police chief do? What are you responsible for in Sutter Creek?
Well, you know, this is, you know, a department this small is like no other place I've ever worked. So, so the chief and I have one sergeant as well. We're responsible for doing a lot of the behind the scenes, the clerical type things on a daily basis, where in bigger departments you have support staff taking care of that. So my typical day is I come in and I read all of the reports that have been submitted. If there's in-custody reports that need to go to the district attorney's office, then we get that, we process that in our record system, and then physically take the files to where they need to go to. Right now I'm working on a couple grants as well as an overall assessment of the department and seeing where our needs lie and where we'd like to go in the future.
Okay, that was one of my questions a little bit farther down, but so at the end of the night, you come on in the morning, so when you're talking, I guess, about the report, like what happened during that night and that from your officers, leave a report, and then you go through that?
Well, we have several ways of passing on information. We have what's called a daily activity log, where the on-duty officers will kind of capsulize and summarize the shift, and that information is passed on to the oncoming shift. Some of those incidents that's in that daily pass-on log may or may not require some sort of police report. So if it didn't, it would be there. If there was some sort of further documentation that needed to be done, then that goes through our records management system and needs to be looked at and improved.
Okay, so how's Sutter Creek equipment up? Does it have adequate the adequate equipment that you think it needs? You have some ideas for something, or?
We do have some needs. Our fleet is getting high in miles. Some of our vehicles, not all of them. Equipment-wise, I think we're okay. There's some other areas that I'd like to look at. One being less lethal munitions, which is, in the ladder of use of force. We want to have a progression. We don't want to go from our hands to our firearms. We want to have options available to us, and that greatly reduces the exposure of liability to not only the police officer but the city.
Okay, so that might bring up when you came in, I noticed you had a weapon here, and I was wondering, kind of looks a little strange there, and asked you what it was. You said it was a taser?
Yes.
So is that like one of the things, you carry a baton? Is that like the first, or a taser? Or
no.
Can you give us like maybe an idea of a progression that you would need?
Sure. Your lowest level of force is verbal.
Okay.
So if I give somebody a command, turn around, put their hands behind their back, and they comply, then that is a lowest level of force that you can have. Then it's hands-on. If you need to do some sort of physical maneuver to get them to comply. From there, you go to pepper spray. Then you have your baton. You have your taser. Those are all considered less lethal. You have your canine. You have pepper ball. You have there's a munition called a 40 millimeter, which is a projectile. And then ultimately, you have deadly force.
Okay, I'm a little curious since you brought it up. That has Sutter Creek used these before? This different progression, or is this something you're bringing to the department?
Well, all departments have different levels of options, force options, and Sutter Creek is no different. We just want to expand that,
okay,
and add a few more things to their tool belt, if you will.
Okay, that must take a lot of training, because you make a lot of split-second decisions out there, it would seem to me like, and in any due to different circumstances, and boy, you certainly want to choose the right one.
Sure. So, not only does an officer have academy training, but they're required to, have ongoing, continued professional training in these areas. It's just not going to the range and shooting, but they need to work on defensive tactics and get requalified with a taser and baton and, on a yearly basis.
Okay, why don't we ask a question like, how many people live in Sutter Creek? What is the area of your, I guess your area of responsibility? Is it Sutter Creek proper and the sphere?
So we're about 2.5 square miles and have roughly 2,500 residents.
Okay.
And so within that, that's obviously our jurisdiction, and that's what we're responsible for. But we because of our size and because of the size of neighboring agencies, we depend on each other quite a bit. So it will not be uncommon for one of my guys to, back a Jackson police officer, go help them out, or I own, or vice versa.
That's kind of interesting. Now, where you were from, in Desert Hot Springs, it was a much bigger area. So would your police department back then interact and co-work with different agencies that much or that often? Because we seem to see it quite a lot here, or hear about it quite a lot.
I would say here is much more than we did down in Riverside County. However, there are lots of times where we needed the assistance of the Highway Patrol, the Sheriff's Department, Cathedral City Police, or Palm Springs Police. More importantly, the most frequent down in the Coachella Valley was the use of the CHP aviation division. So we would routinely use the plane and the helicopter.
Does Amador County have where the different police chiefs and maybe the officers and the Sheriff's Department get together often and discuss things? How do they liaison like that?
Since I'm new, I've gone and on an informal basis met all the department heads in Amador County. There is a monthly chiefs meeting that all the department heads get to talk and get together and talk about regional issues.
Okay, that's great. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll finish up here, okay? All right, stay with us right here on TSPN.
You're watching Amador County's local television network, TSPN.